All right, welcome everyone to Command Line Interface with Terminus. My name is David Needham. I'm very happy to be here today to chat about Terminus, Pantheon's command line interface. And this means a lot to me because I felt like I grew in maturity and complexity, like things I was able to accomplish as a developer increased substantially when I started using my command line interface. So with me, I started out as a Drupal developer. I do a lot more with WordPress and Drupal both now. And so when I was getting started with Drush, it was pretty game changing. I was able to do so much more with my time. I had access to things that just weren't possible before by clicking buttons in the Drupal interface, just by using my command line. So hopefully what we're going to be talking about today is a little bit of that, how you can use Terminus to accomplish more with your sites that are on Pantheon, whether they're Drupal or WordPress or even something else entirely. And also hopefully spread some seeds, some thoughts about automation and give you some ideas about how you can use the things you're going to be learning about today in Terminus to go off and automate and to write scripts for things that are tedious or monotonous or just otherwise something you'd rather not have to think about doing yourself. So let me start with a brief introduction. Again, hello, my name is David Needham. I am a developer advocate at Pantheon. I spend the majority of my time at Pantheon working on training. And that often includes creating new material, thinking about new workshops and new ideas for engaging people who want to learn about Pantheon, and hopefully also leading workshops just like this to help you find success quickly with our platform. We're actually in the process right now of brainstorming and thinking about some totally new training format. The hint right now is like we're thinking about live streaming. We're currently live streaming, but we're thinking about live streaming to Twitch, possibly doing like a talk show format, doing a little bit of a like interview and kind of sharing updates for Pantheon and things like that each week. So if that is something that you think you'd be interested in, I would love to hear it. If you have other ideas for things we should be doing, I would love to hear that too. We'll have a place for feedback at the very end if you want to formally give feedback, but also you can just give feedback in the little chat window whenever you want. Speaking of which, there are lots of ways you can participate in the workshop today. This will be more useful if you kind of collaborate with me, if you share your thoughts and ideas and your questions whenever they come up. If you just use the little chat window wherever you are. You can use the chat window to talk to me, or the comment window if you're on one of the social networks. You can just leave a message. I'll be able to see it. I can get to that, and I can hopefully help you. See, there's a difference because if you're in Zoom right now, we have some folks joining us on Zoom. You had a choice. You went to pantheon.io/live workshops, and you could watch the pre-recorded version, or you could watch the live version. And there's probably a reason why you picked the live version. I don't know exactly why that is. I'd love to hear it in the feedback because that's something we debate about pretty frequently. But if you attended the live version because you wanted someone to talk to, you wanted someone to answer your questions, or maybe contextualize the workshop to your specific needs, you are in the right place, because that is why I'm here to offer this live. We do also rebroadcast this on social networks about a week after it goes live. So if you are in the future, if this is not about 1 p.m. Central Time on Thursday, the 6th of May, then you are in the future, and congratulations. But obviously I can't answer your questions. However, if you're on social networks and you just leave a comment in there, I will be able to see that later and get notified and can follow up with you directly that way as well. So as I sort of alluded to, we are on Zoom. We are also live streaming simultaneously to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So hello to all of our streamers in those locations. Again, if you have any questions or comments or anything, please do make use of your comment window, chat window, and I'll be able to see that all in one place. So we do have other live workshops we go through. The previous hour, my colleague Matthew Cheney just went through getting started with Pantheon. That is a wonderful introduction to Pantheon, but also our workflow, how to make use of the code change system, the structured agile workflows that allow you to deploy changes from one environment to the next and sync up your content. We also talk a little bit about web ops. So Pantheon is a website operations platform, and so We can learn a little bit more about what that means, why it's different, and how you can actually apply that to your day-to-day work. This is the command line interface with Terminus. We always do it on the first Thursday. The Getting Started with Pantheon is every single Thursday, so you could always come back if you missed that one. Next week, we are going to be going through Quicksilver, which is a tool that Pantheon provides to let you write scripts that tap into existing Pantheon workflows. So if you've ever wanted to, say, be notified whenever a change goes live, you deploy to the live environment, notify me on Slack, you can do that, not a problem. You just tap into the Slack API. You can grab one of our example repos if you want to put the code in, and then you're done. If you've ever wanted to do something like maybe say I want to enable certain modules in my development environment, that I use for development purposes, and I want it to happen automatically after I sync up content so that I'm right back to where I started. That's trivial, very, very easy. And we have code examples for that too. And if you've ever wanted to do things like maybe more advanced, maybe you say like every time I deploy to the test environment, I'd like to run a suite of automated tests to make sure that things are working properly. Again, not a problem. We have example scripts for that. But if any of those sound interesting to you, definitely attend our workshop next week. You can always sign up for this and other workshops at pantheon.io/live-workshops and get more information. We do also have a performance workshop where we go through performance topics. We talk about how Pantheon makes your websites fast by default and what you can do to debug performance issues you may be having. And then our final workshop of the month is the Going Live Best Practices workshop, where we have a bit of a lecture where we go through just things you need to know to take your website live on Pantheon. And then we leave lots and lots of time at the end for really your questions. We want to make sure that you have everything that you need to go live. So we leave lots of time, kind of handle it clinic style, let people ask as many questions as they want, and we'll do our best to get through those and help any way we can to help you launch. So this is our lineup every week. Again, you can go to pantheon.io/live-workshops if you'd like to attend any of them. We do also live stream, obviously, but you can't get a reminder for those. So check that out if you'd like. As I mentioned, Pantheon is a website operations platform, and at a high level, WebOps really streamlines how work gets done through agile tools and processes. Now, Terminus, the tool we're going to be talking about here today, is one of those agile tools. It helps you to work in a way that's more agile and more directly with Pantheon. It gives you access to things that are just a little bit tougher to get to by going through the dashboard. And as I mentioned earlier, it does sort of point you in the right direction towards automating, towards writing scripts for things that are kind of boring or monotonous. So let's start just by kind of breaking down a simple Terminus command. Most Terminus commands begin with the word terminus followed by the command, straightforward. If there is a subcommand, it happens after the semicolon or the colon. And then sometimes a command will reference a specific site and a specific environment within that site. So if you're wanting to do something on the dev site of my demo, or the dev environment of my demo site, then you can do that just by typing in those the name of the site, the environment. If you're ever not sure exactly what a command does, you can always go to -H, add a -H on the end. It will give you help for that specific command. And then if you're not sure what commands are available, you can always type in terminus list. So let's take a look at a quick example. Here's my command line interface. I'm going to use terminus. So let's just do a terminus list. Maybe I'm wanting to, terminus list will let that work for me. No, I know I'm going to have to log in a minute, but because it logs you out after I think 24 hours of inactivity. But let's say I have a site, a demo site, and I would like to write a script that helps me do something, automate some part of that process. And I need to know what CMS I'm using. Maybe I have, maybe I'm planning to use this script on a variety of sites. And I need to know, is this a Drupal site or is this a WordPress site? Is it Drupal 7, Drupal 8, Drupal 9? Because maybe the rest of my script needs to know that information to set specific CMS credentials or different conditions for that. So We can look through this list and see if we can figure out something that would tell us the name of the site, plan info, not quite. Machine token, nope. Environment info sounds promising. However, I know there's another one in here for site. Site list will show me all the sites. Site info will display a specific site's information. So if I do Terminus site info, Pantheon weekly demo site, it's going to tell me that I'm not logged in. And again, this happens automatically for security reasons, just to make sure that nobody has access to change or interact with your sites unless you want them to. So you can do that. The good news is that if you have already authenticated in the past, some of those credentials are saved. Your machine token has already been saved. So all that I have to do to log in is know which email address that's associated with my machine token. So if I just do a Terminus auth login and then email, I can define my email address, and that is using my machine token associated with that email. This is really helpful if you're in a situation where maybe you have multiple accounts on Pantheon. Personally, I came from an agency before I worked here, so I already had a Pantheon account for sort of my side gig stuff, and then I have my official Pantheon stuff. And so this is handy to be able to switch between which context I'm working in. All right, so once I've done that, I can just run that command again, Terminus site info, to query that site and get the info about it. Comes back formatted in this nice table, which is helpful when I'm viewing it like this. Not so helpful if I'm going to pass it through a script, though. If I want to access this right here, I can see, well, this is the framework, but grabbing hold of this is just a pain if I'm having to parse through all of this extra formatting and stuff. So rather than do that, let's see if we can get a little bit more info. So if we do Terminus site :info, and then do a -h, I will get help, and I can see exactly what input and output I can expect from this command. So if I scroll back up just a tiny bit, I can see that it is expecting the name of the site to return that site info. That makes sense. And I can format it in any number of ways. So the default is table, which is really helpful to know, but I could format this in maybe a JSON. I could put it in JSON format or an XML format or YAML format. And then those are much, much easier for me to parse down in a script. I can follow the syntax and I can reach out and grab the framework very easily. However, it does get simpler because you can see that I can define the specific fields I want to return in this, or I could just say one specific field. So if I want to do that, it's pretty easy. Just do Terminus site info -- field equals framework. And then I need the name of the site. So Pantheon weekly demo site. And there we go. It returned just the response, just the framework, which is exactly what I want. This is so much easier. I don't have to parse anything or query anything. All I have to do is just grab this one field, put this into my script, and then use a switch, a function, whatever I want to say, okay, now that I know what CMS this is, go off and do this other stuff. So again, this is not meant to be like, hey, here's everything you need to know about Terminus by, this one little example, but hopefully it's an example that can get you some ideas. It can point you in the right direction, help you see how to use it for a, staged but real world example. All right, so next we're going to go through some other examples. We're going to go through a series of slides where we can show you, let's just set the stage. We are going to build a website. In this case, it is a WordPress website, I believe. I think so. But we're going to go through the process of setting up the website, and we're going to compare what it would look like to do it in the dashboard versus using the commands from Terminus. Now, I want to emphasize that the point is not to memorize or even fully understand what each command does. I'm not like giving you an exhaustive list of all the Terminus commands. I'm just simply showing that it's possible to build a website using just your command line interface, just by opening Terminus and running a series of commands. So again, you don't have to write these down. Don't stress too much over the specific syntax. Just know that these things are possible. All right, so if we're going to start a website, we need to start by going to your dashboard. You pop it open, you click this, create new site button. but we can do that. We can get the list of all the sites that we have just by typing in Terminus site list. And then we're in the process of picking our CMS, defining everything that we need to know about the site in order to create it. Well, you do that with Terminus as well, Terminus site create, and then define all of those other variables about the name of the site, the CMS, and whatnot. And then in this case, because we're doing WordPress, we are installing WordPress, right? Once Pantheon has set up your containers and your environments and it's all ready to go, we install our WordPress site. But we can do that from Terminus as well. On every environment exists both Drush, which is the Drupal shell, and WP-CLI, which is the WordPress shell, WordPress command line interface. And you can access those via Terminus. If you're coming from a development background, I know Matt was sharing earlier, he had some experience with Drush, the Drupal shell. In order to work on a remote server with Drush, you have to set up a Drush alias file, and you have to manage that so that the local environment where I'm working on my command line interface knows where that site is out there, and it has credentials to do that. And frankly, it's a pain to manage those credentials. I really hated doing that when I did active development, kind of running my own servers and whatnot. When I came to Pantheon, though, I realized I didn't really need to do any of that anymore, because if I'm using Terminus, as this example is showing you, it's just Terminus WP or Terminus Drush if you're doing Drush, followed by the name of the environment dot the site that I'm actively working on. So, mysite.dev, and then a dash dash. And then everything after the dash dash is your Drush or WP-CLI command. So it's very easy to keep everything that you know about Drush or WP-CLI and just reference it this way, call WP-CLI from Terminus in this environment, and then everything after is just what you'd expect, or just what you could Google if you're unfamiliar with Drush or WP-CLI. And again, those are just ways to interact directly with your site. So like this one right here is installing WordPress core on a site that we set up for WordPress. All right, so next step, we are going to actually create a multi-dev environment on Pantheon. It's always a good idea to do work in a multi-dev environment so you don't impact other people's work. I mean, it's a pretty new project at this point, so it's not such a big deal, but we're following best practices. We're going to start by creating a multi-dev. So we can go in, do Terminus multi-dev create, and have that all set up and ready to go. We want to put that into SFTP mode. The reason for this is because we're going to be using WP-CLI to add some plugins to our website. And so in order to make changes to code directly into our environment, we need to be in SFTP mode. So we can do that by clicking the button in the dashboard, or we can just do Terminus connection set, switch it over to the mode we want. We then start adding in the plugins. We start enabling the plugins, even configuring the plugins. We can do all of that with WP-CLI. Therefore, we can do it all with Terminus. Terminus WP, name of your site dot the environment. And again, the dash dash is what separates the Terminus command from the actual WP-CLI command. In this case, we're doing a plugin activate. Obviously, we've already downloaded the plugins, but that's okay. And then I mentioned Drush a lot, of course. This is exactly the same. If you're doing a Drupal site, you would enable a module and you just use the Drush command, Terminus Drush, instead of Terminus WP. All right, next we want to commit and deploy our changes. So you go in the dashboard, you can, in this case, it looks like we're deploying to live. So we go in, we, write in our deploy log message, we choose the checkboxes that we want, but you can do all of that through Terminus as well. Terminus deploy, and then you define what you want. So in this case, we're actually deploying to our test environment, and we are choosing those checkboxes to update the database, we're clearing the cache, and we are syncing our content, which is going to clone live, copy that stuff, overwrite it onto test, so we have an up-to-date test environment. All right, and then finally, we also have configuration management. In WordPress, you need a plugin like WP-CFM, the WordPress configuration management plugin, and it will allow you to export some of your configuration out of the database into code. And this is absolutely wonderful because a lot of times it is very difficult to, well, let me say it another way. It's a bad idea to make big configuration changes on your live environment. It's risky, it's dangerous, and that's terrible. Nobody should be making configuration changes on live. But it's tough because configurations change or is saved in the database, right? So if you make a configuration change in dev or in test or in your multi-dev environment, you basically have to redo those changes again and hope that you don't make any mistakes. And frankly, that's just untenable. That's not really a good solution for anyone. Nobody likes to do more work more than once, and it's often poor quality work at that point. It just doesn't hold up. So configuration management is the answer to that. With configuration management in WP-CFM in WordPress, or just the configuration management system in Drupal, it takes the configuration that you've made in one environment, it exports it into code so that you can commit it and deploy it like your other code changes. And then in a new environment, like you're deploying to test, you're deploying to live, all that you have to do is import your configuration, and all of those changes are now in place. Now, I will say in Drupal, this is all built into core. It's all part of Drupal core itself. And so there is much stronger and more fleshed out support for what is able to be saved in the configuration system and able to be managed that way. In WordPress, the WP-CFM plugin is about the closest thing you can get. It does a pretty good job, but it doesn't catch everything. So if you're working in a page builder, for example, to flesh out your page and you have content in there and stuff like that, it's probably not going to be able to help you with content that way. But we're kind of getting in a tangent that's going into another topic. If you have questions about this, specifically configuration management, I have a talk that I gave at a few different events. I'd be happy to share that with you, or just talk more about configuration management later on. But let's move on. All right, and then in preparation for going live, maybe you want to clear the cache. You can, of course, click the button in the dashboard, but we can just do an environment clear cache like that. You want to set up your backup schedule. Maybe you want to download a local backup in order to work locally for a little bit or something like that. No problem. You can do Terminus backup get. You can also set a custom backup. So if you've ever wanted to have like a custom backup schedule that's more frequent than once a day, or if you've wanted to do something kind of more than what you can do from the dashboard, that is possible using Terminus. So there are some people that will set up a little Terminus script that runs on cron and maybe a Circle CI or some other server somewhere else, and it just says, hey, every 5 hours or every whatever time increment you specify, go out, create a backup in this environment, and it does it. So that's a way of setting up your own version of the backup schedule. And then again, we're preparing to go live, so we're going to set up New Relic. So every site gets access to New Relic APM Pro. So you can go in and click the buttons, but you could also just do that through Terminus. And then Redis, our object cache, which is great for logged in traffic or your kind of rendering of your more complex pages. You can click the buttons there, or you can do it through Terminus. And so the question here, it's on the screen now. What if we wanted to script that? When I was building sites on a like weekly basis, I would go through these steps manually first. Sort of like my sort of maturity model of growing as a developer and as a Pantheon user was I would just build a site. I would go in and do these things manually. I'd click buttons in the interface, and then I discovered Terminus. And I realized all of those steps could be individual Terminus commands. And I don't have to open the browser. I don't have to wait for a page to load. I can do these things step by step using commands that are so much easier. But it's still steps I have to do. I still have to make sure I get everything exactly right and the steps are in the right order and stuff like that. But what I realized is that once you have those Terminus commands, once you know the order that those go in, it is extremely simple to set up a bash script. I actually had a bash script that I set up on my computer for grabbing backups from Pantheon. I worked locally primarily, and I realized, oh man, I don't have to like sit and wait for the backup to complete and then download the backup and then manually import into my local development environment. I can just run a script that goes through each one of those steps and says like, okay, I'm about to start my workday. Let's run that script. Let's go get some coffee. And by the time I get back, everything in my local environment is just ready to go. And it's really as easy as just stringing these Terminus commands together into a simple little bash script. Of course, you can take it to the next level as well. This is right here, spinning up a website. If you're spinning up a website on a regular basis, you could very much just take these commands that we posted here with a few extras and do it on demand. You specify the name and the CMS, and then it goes through and already adds all of your plugins the way that you want them to. It adds your themes, the ones that you prefer. It sets all of the stuff up so it's ready to go, so you don't have to waste time going through this boring part of the project. You can jump right into adding content and configuring the site. And I think that's pretty cool. But it can be taken even further, right? Like the step after that was like, well, imagine we put this script on a continuous integration service, like a Circle CI or Jenkins. There's a lot of them out there. What if we said, hey, let's make a website be created on demand in response to something else that's happening? Maybe like a customer visits one of our websites, and they go through an interest form where they're saying, hey, we are in higher ed or government or whatever industry. We are interested in this type of website with these features and functionality. And so they click the buttons, they type in the information, and they click send or whatever. And when that happens, it automatically goes out to, it sends the response over to Circle CI. It reads that, it fills out the information for the script, and then immediately starts building the website. And then when the sales rep or the manager, whomever is responsible for reading that email and replying to that request, can wait 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. I mean, it depends on the complexity. They wait for the website to be done, and it already, like, by the time they're on the phone with the customer or potential customer, they have a demo site that has been spun up that is ready for them to enter just a little bit more info into and show off, maybe not a completed thing, of course, but like, hey, here's, we're getting there, here's a little thing, let's, see, is this in the right direction, stuff like that. So if you haven't been able to tell, this stuff gets me very excited. It's interesting to see the things that people do with this code and the ways that they automate their processes. So I'm always very excited to chat about these ideas. So we haven't really talked about how to install Terminus, and that's partly intentional. It's a little bit different depending on your operating system and all that stuff, but let me point you in the right direction. So we have this Terminus manual, and I'm going to put a link to this in the chat window. So one moment while I type into a box. There we go. I'm also going to send it out to our folks streaming in from the social networks. There you go. All right, so the Terminus manual is extremely useful because it goes through everything that you need to know about Terminus, how to get started, maybe some gotchas and troubleshooting steps, and even more. So let's go through some of the basics. First of all, if you're wanting to install Terminus, you go to install, and it has all the information right here. As Matt had mentioned earlier, he's on Windows, and Windows can be a bit of a pain sometimes. We have some steps for that on here, and specifically, we recommend installing the Windows subsystem for Linux. That will make it easier or work more consistently, but even then, it can work on regular Windows as well. I've heard of people doing it, but I don't personally have a Windows machine that I set up like this, so I don't know. However, there are a bunch of additional troubleshooting steps at the bottom that, whenever I've done training, have been really helpful for helping people sort of get over the little errors that you see. So more than likely, if you are having trouble installing Terminus, go down to the troubleshooting section, check out the things that are mentioned here, and see if there's an issue. If you still have trouble, we have some links to some help resources at the end that can kind of get you connected and pointed in the right direction. Next, we have example usage, which goes through really some of the stuff that we talked about in the class today. It goes through some of those examples that we touched on earlier. There is also examples for writing your first script. Like maybe if you want to write a bash script, like I mentioned, there's a section in here for, actually it's in the scripting section down here, to start creating a bash script or set up a bash variable if you want to maybe save some of the information about like what the name of the site is. Maybe the site is very long or tedious. You can set this up in a way that will make your life a little bit easier. Frankly, though, if this is intimidating, if you don't currently know much about bash or your command line interface, you don't know how to write a bash script, I would have been intimidated by this if I was just getting started. But it's interesting because if you have a, if you Google like your bash RC file or bash profile files. It's something that everyone should have, although on Windows it might be a little different, sorry. But you're able to go in and just create like a little function. You can define your function in bash, and you can Google how to do that. You put in, just literally paste in your commands that you're wanting to run, and it will go through and run them one by one. Now, I think this is the better, like more official, proper way to do it, like putting it in its own file and being able to call that file or script, directly. But if you're just getting started, find a way that works best for your current level, and then use that to grow and try other things. There are also other examples in here for other things. Like we have this Pantheon example, Terminus auto update script, which is kind of a mouthful, but it will take some steps towards automating your security updates for your site. It is currently unsupported. We've been kind of putting all of our effort into our new autopilot program. Autopilot is a thing that's currently in limited access. We're not rolling it out to everyone yet, but it fully automates the process of doing updates for not just Drupal and WordPress core, but also the plugins and modules. And it has built-in visual regression testing to make sure nothing is visually breaking on the website in response to a change. And it just can fully automate that entire process. So if you want to learn more about that, pantheon.io/autopilot. We do also have a workshop for autopilot. If you want to learn more about that, you can attend. It is tomorrow, I think at 2 p.m. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I'd be happy to send a link to anyone who is interested. If you indicate in the little chat window that you'd like to learn more about the autopilot workshop, I can give you that information. All right, Pantheon is also able to be, or Terminus is also able to be extended with plugins. So there is a whole directory here of plugins that can extend what Terminus is able to do by default. So you can take it further. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but a couple of my favorites are the Build Tools plugin is incredibly useful for people that are working with a lot of websites, and maybe they want a workflow to manage things with Composer. Let's say like I'm working locally with Composer. I want to get PRs in GitHub or GitLab or wherever else I'm working, and I want the completed finished version of the website to end up over on Pantheon, and I want this workflow just automated so that all I have to do is use the interface and click buttons. Well, Build Tools plugin is able to set up that complex workflow for you so that everything is in one place in GitHub or wherever you want it to be, and all of your code ends up over on Pantheon. And it can do a lot more than just that, but that's a quick summary, and you can get more information by clicking the link here. My other favorite one is the Site Clone plugin. And the reason why it's my favorite is because, as I mentioned, I do a lot of training, and sometimes that involves spinning up sandbox websites for students. In particular, I help some folks at universities, professors who have classes that utilize Pantheon because our sandboxes don't cost anything, and they're professional grade, sandboxes that you can use to spin up on demand, whatever type of site you want. So what they'll do is they'll send me kind of a list of the students that are attending the class. I'll pass it through a script, and we'll spin up sites based on whatever starting point the professor specified. So one way, if you're coming from an agency background, maybe you have a few template sites that you've built for, here's my higher ed template, here's my government template, here's my marketing template. You can kind of go from there. And then whenever you start a new project that is in one of those categories, you just use the Site Clone plugin, create an exact copy, including the Git history of that, and then you're off and running very quickly. Potentially even faster than if you wrote a Terminus script to go through each of those steps one by one. So that can kind of save some time and go through that. If that is something you're interested in, though, you might also consider the Pantheon's custom upstreams, which will let you define a starting code base and manage lots of sites more easily if the sites are very similar. So lots of higher ed make use of custom upstreams, and lots of organizations have lots of similar sites that they manage. All right, so that's the directory of plugins. And of course, you can create your own plugins. If you're on a team and maybe you do something as part of your team and your other teammates, you don't want them to have to do that manually on themselves, you can create a plugin, share it with your teammates, maybe share it back with Pantheon if it's useful for other people. And then you can go through and use a Terminus command that you have created that does something very specific to your situation. And then there's some configuration file and version updates, but that really brings us to the end of the manual. And also brings us kind of to the end of the workshop too. Now we do like to leave some time for questions, so we have lots of time for that. We do also have this more resources link. I'm going to put this into the chat for your convenience, and I'll talk briefly through what you can find on this more resources slide. Now, this is a great time to ask questions. I would love for you to take advantage of me being here live and willing to help you out. So while I'm talking through the more resources slide, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to throw them in the chat window. Let me know what you are going through or what you would like to go through, and I would be very happy to spend a little bit more time after this talking about what you need. All right, so here is the more resources page. If you popped it open, it looks like this. We're seeing the previous week's workshop, not previous week, but the previous month, the last time this workshop was given. You'll find the recording right there for your convenience. We also have a section here for feedback. And as I mentioned earlier on, feedback is extremely important, not just to me, but to the rest of Pantheon too. If you have something good to say, like if you want to tell us that we did a good job, that is always appreciated, of course. And it's also good because it means that, hey, this is something that someone found useful, and it's something we should keep doing. We should keep investing our time and money into doing these workshops every week. If there's anything we can improve, that's potentially even more useful because we want to make this better. We want to make this genuinely as useful as it can be for anyone who's spending the time with us. So please do let us know if there's anything we could improve at all. And please do let us know if you also enjoyed the workshop today. Now, there are additional resources, basically links from the slides that you might already have some access to, so like the Terminus manual right here. Also, we had someone yesterday, we have weekly office hours that I'll talk about in a minute, who popped in and was saying that they kind of understood Terminus, but they're trying to get to the next level. They're trying to understand how to use it. They're also trying to build a Drupal website for the first time, and they're kind of looking for the right direction. Well, this guide right here will take you through step by step, spelled out very clearly, how to create a Drupal site using just Terminus. Well, just Terminus and Drush, but Drush is part of Terminus, so that's okay. This will take you through step by step. So if you want to go through and see how Terminus works on a sort of real scenario, you can do that yourself. There's also an example here for WordPress. So if you want to spin up a WordPress website, install Terminus, go through the steps to get that set up, and then you're ready to go. Those are great learning examples. Now, there are many ways to keep learning after today. I've already mentioned office hours. It's probably my favorite. With Pantheon office hours, we meet every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central, and we just have an open mic. It's not a webinar like this. Anyone can unmute themselves and talk and ask whatever questions they have about whatever it is they're working on. We'll frequently get people hanging out and just kind of sort of doing like co-working or just kind of seeing what questions people are asking. It's a great sort of community sharing time for that. But most important is it's a space for you to ask questions every week. And we have a whole hour. So I don't think we've ever not gotten through every single question. I think every single time we've gotten through everything, or at least had a follow-up to tackle with that. So any Wednesday, feel free to hop on by. You can get a link right here through the more resources link that I shared earlier. There is also a forum if you'd like to ask questions about this course, maybe share your plugin that you created if you wrote a Terminus plugin, or ask questions about like, hey, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to create a script for whatever. How would I do that on Pantheon? I would recommend putting it into this forum. This is a forum that is set up specifically for this class. So, not exclusive to the people in this room right now, but for anyone who has taken this workshop. So you can come in here, you can create a new topic. I will get notified anytime there's a new topic created, and I can come in and help you with that. And fortunately, some other people in the community will also be able to come in and help you with that. We do also have Slack. Slack is more your cup of tea. You can join our Slack community. We have thousands of people hanging out, asking questions, sharing things they're working on, getting help. So definitely join us there. And then if all else fails, if there is something actually wrong with Pantheon itself, you can always open up chat support just by going to the support tab, clicking on chat, and they'll be able to help you directly. And then there are finally lots more training resources that are available. If this format didn't work for you, we have guides or docs for covering many things. And then also, if you feel like you or your team would benefit from a private training, maybe covering a custom agenda or advanced topics that go beyond what we cover in the weekly live workshops, absolutely let us know. We are always happy to do that as well. So reach out via the link and get information about other training options. And with that, we are sort of done. So I have not seen any questions. I did see Hema mentioned the interest in the autopilot workshop. So let me get the link for that. I'm going to share it in the chat. There you go. So this is the link for the autopilot workshop. It is this Friday, tomorrow, at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So you'll be able to see a demo. My colleague Matthew Cheney will be going through and talking about what autopilot is, how it works, how to use it. Again, it's not available for everyone yet, but I think the plan is by July, it will be fully open and available for anyone to join. Or I should clarify, anyone from an agency. It is being limited to the folks who will benefit most from it, and that's agencies that probably have lots of websites. So it will be available to them starting, I believe, in July. All right, any other questions? Anything else I can help answer for you today? All right, I'm not seeing anything come in, so we can wrap it up. Thank you all very much for attending the workshop today. Like I said, I genuinely hope that this is useful. We try to make it as useful as we can. Please do give us feedback if there's anything we can do to make it even better. And with that, I will go ahead and say goodbye, and I hope to see you around the community.